to Eye on Horror, the official podcast of iHorror.com. This is episode 52, otherwise known as season 3, episode 16, with a question mark, because I think I didn't check those numbers, but I think they're right. I am your host, James J. Edwards, and with me, as always, is your other host, Jacob Davison. How you doing, Jacob?
Doing good, and a few pounds later, I finally got my hair cut.
But you still have the longest hair of the three of us.
Yeah, and reduced capacity, but still, you guys went full-blown shaved. I just got a trim.
Hey, when you're doing it yourself, it's easy to just shave. Shave and be done with it, especially in the California summers.
True, which seems to extend well into the fall.
Yeah, and it's going to extend even further and further as it gets warmer and warmer. Global warming. Okay, wait, we're not getting... Why do we always get political? Even before I've introduced him. Also with us is your other host, John Correa. How you doing, Correa?
Doing well. You know, for the last couple weeks, been starting my day off with this mashup of Charlie Daniels' Devil Went Down to Georgia with Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion's WAP. And, that's really been getting me through things. Yeah. It's such a great note to start my day off with, you know, so.
Whenever I need a little pick me up, you know that the AV Club did that, what was it? Is Under the Covers or something like that? They would do those they would choose bands to do cover songs.
Oh, right.
There's a Charlie Bliss version of Steal My Sunshine that whenever I need to pick me up, I just pop that on. It's on YouTube. Charlie Bliss, Steal My Sunshine. Listen for it. It's awesome.
Oh, yeah, and they also did Gwar covering Kansas's Carry On My Wayward Son. I love that one.
That was great. That Gwar one was awesome.
Gwar's done a few, because I feel like Gwar also did West End Boys, but then they turned it into Lots of People Have Died, and it was all about Odorous. This is the post-Odorous Gwar.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, they did a few with them over the years.
Damn, now I'm going to have to go into that more.
A lot of those have disappeared. There's really only one season, which it has some good stuff. There's I think they're called Big Moon did Total Eclipse of the Heart, and The Regrets do Fox on the Run. There's some cool stuff, but I think there's only one season up. But anyway, now we're getting further away from horror than we normally do.
And so quickly.
What have you guys been watching? What's happening at the drive-in?
Yeah, well, I think me and Jonathan should talk about our first night at Beyond Fest.
Yeah. Oh, my God. Was it... It was such a great night.
Yeah, Beyond Fest, for those of you who don't know, is one of the largest genre festivals on the West Coast, hosted by the American Cinematheque, which of course they couldn't hold at the theater this year due to the pandemic, so decided to keep things going with their drive-in series by holding this year's Beyond Fest at Mission Tiki Drive-In in Montclair. And they started off strong with Brandon Cronenberg's Possessor.
Uncut.
Yeah. No, they did emphasize it was uncut.
Oh, was it ever? and they double featured it. Brandon picked the second film to follow it up, which was John Frankenheimer's Seconds,
starring Rock Hudson.
Yeah, which I had never seen before, and the mashup with the two, it was because I hadn't seen either films, and it's been a while since I've been to a double feature where I hadn't seen either film. And it was just such a great reminder on why going to the movies is so great. When you go see something on the big screen and just end up walking away with one of your new favorite movies is...
Oh, yes.
It's such a great experience. It sucked going to work the next day because I didn't get home till 1 o'clock in the morning. But...
Yeah, and love Possessor. And funnily enough, I thought it was a great kind of companion movie to Tenet, which was playing on the opposite screen to our lot. But yeah, no, it's like a sci-fi thriller espionage movie starring Andrea Riseborough from Mandy, where she's like an agent who uses this technology to have her mind implanted into the minds of others and commit assassinations and stuff. And she's on a new case, but things start to go off the rails.
I saw that Korea saw Tenet the way Christopher Nolan imagined it, which is with somebody standing on their brakes in front of you at a drive-in.
Well,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, the previous weekend I saw it at the drive-in, and this guy, like, it just kept beeping. And, like, I don't know what it is about the drive-in, but when people fuck up, like, I don't get angry like I do in a movie theater. I kind of laugh it off. It's like, this is kind of funny. And then I think it was mostly the joke of, like, the way Christopher Nolan intended. It kept playing in my head, so I kept giggling. But after 10 minutes of it, I was just like, okay, I'm going to go say something. And, like, but the guy was super nice. I just walked up, knocked on his window, or did, like, you know, like in Wayne's World when he's like, roll down your window, and he rolls it down. I'm like, hey, can you, every time you hit your brake lights turn on, can you stop that? And he's like, I'm so sorry. I'm like, yeah, dude, it's all good. He was super nice, but he was completely unaware. But since then, if my foot touches my brake while I'm at the drive-in, I immediately am like, oh shit, sorry, you know, out my window. but yeah, no, Possessor was absolutely phenomenal. Like Brandon Cronenberg, definitely. You know, it's the second one after Antiviral, and he's established such a good, like, voice and tone. You can see, like, a little bit of influence of his father, but that's almost unavoidable. But even so, like, it's definitely, like, a more separate thing. Jennifer Jason Leigh also is in it, and she's phenomenal.
Oh, yeah.
It was hard not to when the movie first starts because of its connections of, like, you know, questions of, like, human bodies and technology and stuff. I was like, oh man, is this kind of going to be like a spiritual successor to Existence? It wasn't, but it was a fun thought.
Have either of you guys seen, and I may be opening a can of worms here, did either of you guys see Antebellum?
I have it rented, and I was going to watch it last night, but I rented two movies. I rented that and The Rental, and the reviews for Antebellum kind of killed a lot of my excitement for it, so we're gonna watch it tonight.
That's why. Did you see it, Jacob?
No,
Antebellum.
I
Okay.
haven't watched it yet.
That's why I feel like I'm opening a can of worms. I loved Antebellum. I thought it was incredible, but it is getting skewered. I feel like me and Scott Weinberg are the only critics who liked Antebellum. I think it's brilliant. I think it is genius. I did not see the twist that they're saying, don't give away the twist. I did not see it coming. Now, other people are saying, I totally saw it coming. And in retrospect, there are clues, but it came out of nowhere for me. And it was a jaw dropper when it happened. Like, it kind of creeps up on you slowly, and then when it makes it obvious, you're like, holy shit, that's what's happening. Oh my, I loved it. I thought it was incredible. I don't understand all the hate it's getting. I'm really curious to see what you're going to think of it, because I loved it, and I can't understand why anybody doesn't love it, but I am definitely in the minority of being a fan, because it's getting skewered, and I don't know why.
Well, tune in 2 weeks from now to find out what I think.
Now, what'd you think of The Rental, though?
Oh man, I loved The Rental. Like, that one, like, I was of course excited for it. It's got my man crush in it, Dan Stevens, you know, so obviously, you know, was already game for it. And I knew next to nothing. All I knew was just like a bunch of people rent a rental. That's it. I didn't watch anything for it,
so it's not just a clever name.
Yeah. But like, I thought it was super solid. Like, so much of I like movies where you almost forget that you're watching a horror movie for a while, you know, like Takashi Miike does that really well with Audition, where Audition kind of plays out like a boring romantic comedy for a large portion of its run, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh hey, here's something fucked up to bring you back to the horror. But yeah, there was one point where Lindsay turned to me and she's like, oh, I forgot we were watching a horror film for a while, because it plays out like a nice character drama, and there's a lot going on with that, and you kind of get sucked into it. And one thing I really liked about it is the drama that was happening with all the characters was going on so well. I didn't find myself personally liking a lot of the characters, but it didn't matter. I was still sucked into their story. And I think that's hard to achieve, is to have characters that are kind of unlikable, but still worrying about them, still sucked into their story, still going like, oh no, here comes the thing that's going to kill them, and you still feel, you're not just going, finally they're killing that douchebag. You're like, oh shit. So I thought it was very nice. I thought it was really well done, very tight thriller. that really amps up the horror in the last act. Like that was I dug it. Like I was surprised that was a first time directing gig.
Do you think James Franco is now going to be considered Dave Franco's big brother?
Yeah, I didn't want to say anything negative. You know, I try to stay away from the negatives. But I have to say, I think I've enjoyed Dave Franco's one movie way more than anything I've seen James Franco direct. So they can put that on the box. They can put that on the box art.
Just put that right on the cover.
I enjoyed this more than anything James Franco has made.
And this is how he becomes friends with Dave Franco.
Did either of you guys watch Spiral on Shudder?
Not yet. It's on my watch list.
Spiral is actually pretty cool. It's basically about this mixed race, same-sex couple who moves to this little town from the city to raise. They have a 16-year-old daughter, and you know, the town is kind of outwardly welcoming, but under the surface, you can kind of see there's some hostility. And at first you think it's just simple, you know, homophobia and, you know, hate crime kind of stuff. But then it's much more than that. So it gets spooky fast. It's actually it's pretty well done. It's a little Lifetime movie like, but there's a point where it becomes less like Lifetime movie when it gets really spooky, but it's pretty cool. It's a pretty fun little excursion. Shudder and IFC are killing it this year. I mean, they're embracing the fact that people, you know, have to go to drive-ins or have to stay home because they're releasing good shit.
Yeah.
Sort of related, Cinematic Void returned with their Cinemadness movie this week, and I got to see Dark Knight of the Scarecrow, which I'd never seen before. Have either of you guys seen it?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, it's like this. It was this TV horror movie from the early '80s about like this. Mentally handicapped guy named Bubba who's friends with this neighbor girl, and like when the girl's attacked by a dog, like this angry mob blames him for the attack, and one thing kind of leads to another, and they kill him vigilante style. But then they find out that it was, you know, a dog attack, so they cover it up and make it look like that he attacked them with a pitchfork.
But he's hiding, isn't he? Hiding in a scarecrow when they kill him?
He was hiding in the scarecrow when they find him and they executed him, and they managed to avoid conviction at the trial. But after that, like, they start getting picked off one by one, and the telltale sign is like they keep seeing the scarecrow almost like it just kind of popping up in the background. And I was actually surprised. It was really well made. Like, it was generally creepy, and also it's a Halloween movie, so it was just in the style. And I was also amazed with what they were able to get away with for a TV movie, because you don't see a whole lot of gore, but like people die in like terrible ways. Like there's even one kill scene involving a wood chipper.
Nice.
Back in the late 70s, early 80s, TV movies were allowed to be scary. I mean, you had the original Don't Be Afraid of the Dark, Bad right. Ronald. I mean, these...
The Woman in Black.
Oh, yeah.
Even Duel was a TV movie.
All right.
They were allowed to, like, scare you, but now it's like, you know, unless you want to start your movie at 10 p.m., you know, which who wants to do that, you know? But also, I think part of that might just be the culture of cable TV now. If you want to make a scary movie, you will go toward, you know, like either TBS or, you know, one of the, or straight to like HBO.
Also, streaming seems to be the way to go with a lot of TV movies nowadays.
Yeah.
Yeah, but TV movies were kind of neutered before streaming became a big thing. So I think True. It might be, I mean, you're right. A lot of made for TV stuff that is too risque, either violently or sexually. Yeah, they just set it right to. But I mean, it ended well before. I mean, in the 90s is when I think they stopped making cool, scary TV movies. And there's a YouTube channel, I think it's called like Retro TV or something, that has all those cool TV movies. I mean, When Michael Calls, and there's one with Valerie Harper called Night Drive or something like that. It's kind of like Duel, where she's getting followed by a creepy guy at night. And Trilogy of Terror was a TV movie.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, man, being a kid back then was so much fun because they showed that stuff on TV.
And then you got Tales from the Crypt too, in the late 80s, 90s.
True.
I had to watch the neutered version on A&E growing up.
Oh,
Yeah, I watched the edited versions on the Sci-Fi Channel.
Actually, I just watched the original 80s The Woman in Black for a second time since quarantine.
Oh.
And I don't know if I talk about that in a previous episode?
I don't think so.
I don't remember if you did.
Well, if I did, I don't care, because this movie's fucking brilliant. I've watched this movie twice. It's just a perfectly, I get balanced, just like horror ghost story where it doesn't pop up a lot. Like, but when the Woman in Black does come up, oh my god, she is creepy. She's just like in the background of a shot for a little bit, and then like, you know, they cut to the guy and they cut back, she's gone. They just do it so effectively, you know, and like it's just so good. There's one scene where the main character is describing her eyes, and I of course had all the lights out in the apartment, and I just like was looking around and I'm like, I am genuinely creeped out right now, because some of this is exactly what I was saying about her eyes when they zoomed in on him. So yeah, Woman in Black, I highly recommend that to everybody ever.
We're going to move on because we have an awesome guest, but before we do that, I just have one more thing to talk about. And I think we talked about it off mic last time, but Benji, our guest last episode, was talking about this movie called Murder, Death, Koreatown. And I think it was not in the show. But anyway, he recommended if you like found footage. And I watched it, and
Yeah.
he's right. It's weird because there's very little information about this movie. Like, everything is anonymous on it. And it's about a guy who basically, one of his neighbors murders her husband. And then he goes kind of searching for clues about this murder, and he uncovers way more than he should. Like, there's like all these conspiracy theories and all this other crap. And what's creepy about it is, first of all, it's completely anonymous. The director and everything is anonymous, but also the murder's real. When you look it up, you can see this woman really killed her husband. And I don't know if this guy really did live in that neighborhood or if he just went there to shoot this. But the interviews that he gets with other people in the neighborhood feel authentic. It's genuinely there are some that I think are actors. Like at one point he goes to a psychic, and I think that's an actor. But he does talk to people like driving by in cars and walking on the street that, you know, he may have just, you know, Blair Witched them and, you know, included the creepy parts of the conversation. But it's really... I won't say it's as convincing as Blair Witch, because nothing is going to be as convincing as Blair Witch ever. But this is pretty creepy that, I mean, just the fact that it's based on something that you can verify and that's real is really creepy. So anyway, Murder, Death, Koreatown, which should be your Twitter name for Halloween.
Murder, Death, Koreatown. Murder, Death, Koreatown. Maybe. I don't know. Korean barbecue is pretty good.
No, I mean your Twitter name, not your Twitter handle. You got to keep Korean barbecue forever.
Yeah.
But you know how people change. I think, aren't you Jacob Gravison right now?
Yeah, Jacob Gravison. Yeah. Yes.
You know, people change their names for Halloween.
Oh, yeah.
Murder, Death, Koreatown.
I forgot what mine was last year.
I think I was James J of the Dead Words one year. But I haven't changed it this year. Okay.
Nice.
This episode, we have a special guest with us. We have Brian Duffield, who is a writer and a director. He wrote the Babysitter and Underwater, which we're excited about. We love Underwater.
Oh, cool.
And also his new movie, Spontaneous, is coming out. So let's say hello to Brian. Hi, Brian.
Hello, everybody.
Hey, Brian.
Hey.
Hi. Hey.
Let's get the obvious question out of the way early. How did you get started in the business? How did you know that you wanted to be a writer-director, and how did you go about getting it done?
Oh, man. Well, the brief version, I guess, is, ever since I was a kid, that's all I wanted to do. And then that's what I went to college to do. I had no fallback kind of things. And then I had been writing scripts kind of all throughout college, and I couldn't get anyone to read them. And then a buddy of mine, after I moved out to LA, gave one of my old scripts to the dude who's now my manager. And that was in 2010. So I guess I've been doing this for 10 years now.
Now, James was understating how much we loved Underwater. I know Jacob has seen it. How many times did you see Underwater in theaters?
I saw it 3 times in theaters.
Oh, wow. So it was all you.
How many times since theaters? How many times total have you watched Underwater?
I think I've watched it at least 3 or 4 more times since I got it on home video.
Well, that's cool. I appreciate the residuals.
Happy to help.
That's awesome.
Yeah, big fan. Like, when it came out in theaters, we were definitely rooting for it and plugging it on the show. Just like we're big fans of aqua horror, so we thought that really just hit all the right buttons for that, from start to finish. Like, we really dug it.
Oh, cool. Where do you guys live, by the way? There's a specific reason I ask.
Well, I'm in Los Angeles.
Have you ever been to Zombie Joe's on Lancashire? You guys would love it. It's like a horror-themed theater house. And every Halloween, except for, this year, they do a Halloween show where you go in, it's all dark, you sit on the floor, and the lights come on maybe 5%, and like a little silent horror scene plays out in front of you, and then the lights go out. And it's not like there's no rhythm to when it comes back on or anything. But that was where I got the idea for Underwater, was this crazy little playhouse on Lancashire. Just because it was so fun and so scary and so dark, but you're cramped in with a bunch of other people, so you can't get away. So they would run at you and do other crazy, sometimes it would be really darkly funny kind of stuff, and sometimes it would be extremely inappropriate horror kind of stuff. But that was, they never had a underwater themed kind of sketch, but just that idea of you're kind of trapped in this little space and it's completely dark, and then there's just a little bit of light that's helping kind of illuminate creatures or whatever in front of you. In the Playhouse, it was so visceral, and I was I really want to figure out what a movie version of this feeling is. And so trapping a bunch of people in the bottom of the ocean felt as close as I could get to that kind of nightmare feeling. So I'm really glad you guys dug it. I haven't seen it in theaters because it wasn't out long enough for me to get to it. So I need to, at some point I need to catch it.
Yeah, I especially really loved how it was very with the idea thematically, it was very Lovecraftian, but it wasn't cosmic, it wasn't this is from deep parts of space. It was very no, this is within our own realm. This is, underwater. There's still a lot of mysterious stuff down there, and for that, it kind of made it a bit more grounded, and it's scary because it's oh wow, yeah, no, this is all just shit that's underneath us.
What struck me about it is it's not, it's really tense, really suspense. It's clearly a horror movie, but there aren't even monsters in it for the first 2/3. It's just almost like a disaster movie, and you're chewing your fingernails to the nub before you even realize that there are monsters.
Right. It's the worst place to be in the world. Yeah. It really was one of those things where it's just beyond caves, because I think I would do really badly in that, the descent I find really stressful.
Oh yeah.
But not once the monsters come up I can hang. But when they're all tight and that stuff, I really struggle with watching that kind of horror, to a point where it's not enjoyable, but I like the idea of that claustrophobia. So I felt what the ocean floor gives you is you are trapped and you have that, but you're not, it's a little bit more pleasurable of a viewing experience than you're tightly stuck in a cave where you could get stuck and just die.
Did you see Blair Witch from a few years back? Not the Blair Witch Project, Blair Witch.
Oh, Wingard's one?
Yeah. Oh, the last
when they're
20
out
minutes
of,
of that. Oh,
yeah, it's awful.
The mine or whatever.
It's a panic attack. It is. That's terrifying.
Yeah, that's I think that's probably the only horror I really can't engage. If it's happening on screen, I just get kind of instantly exhausted. Or I'm just like, there's no like horror, even like that fun sensation of that. Like I'm just like stressed out. And I'm just like, I just want this to end.
And that's another thing I really like about Underwater is that it just kicks off running. Like, you know, we just get like a few minutes of setup, and then just all hell breaks loose.
Yeah, and even that, like the script, because there's a bunch of writers that came after me, but the script started after the earthquake. Because I was just like, we all know why we're in the theater, kind of thing. Like, it's it's one of those things where it's just like, if you have your actors, you're just those first couple of minutes you're just waiting for everything to go wrong. So I was just like, let's just have already gone wrong, and you're just dealing with like, because it's such a clean idea where like it's really bad if you're on the bottom of the ocean. Like you don't need to add too many complications to like, oh, but there's an earthquake, or but it's like. I think audiences get like, oh, we just gotta not be on the bottom of the ocean. Like that's the whole goal. And then it's just how much shit you can throw at people.
That's some solid advice. Hey guys at home, Brian, to quote Brian, stay out of the bottom of the ocean. Just don't go there.
Don't be at the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah, just don't do it.
There's not like any there. Yeah, there really is. It's like there's no rom-coms happening down there. Like it's one of those things. And there's like. And and I also felt like there was like there are like bottom of the ocean movies, but it felt like they're it's like you get like a space disaster kind of a couple times a year, but like I felt like that was such an area where you weren't getting like that gravity experience kind of in a theater, especially, and it's like something where it's imminently closer and more, I guess, not attainable, but it's just, the ocean is really stressful. And especially like as people are getting more and more, I don't know if cocky is the word, but as that kind of deeply exploration kind of keeps taking off. Like I remember when I was a kid reading The Meg, which they made into the Statham movie, but like the book had a lot of that kind of like, we're, messing around down there and things are going bad. And then just like the idea of like, a giant megalodon is so fun, but then it felt like with this it was like if they were messing around down there and there was just a whole kind of bizarre monster culture that was happening that they just kind of let loose. It just felt I just want to see people get torn apart by monsters. So,
don't we all?
Yeah, but it also felt like the kind of thing it's like you don't I like anytime you can like have like a horror setup where you don't have weapons is especially with monsters, it's so great because I feel like there's a lot of monster movies where it's just people unloading rounds and shit, but it felt like a kind of thing where you're just down there, you can't hide, you're just like completely exposed, and there's nothing, and if you don't keep moving you die. So it was just like this kind of even when you're attacked you're like, well, if I survive, like I still have to keep moving during the attacks or else I'm definitely going to die. So it felt like a nice recipe for all of my nightmares.
And how? Yeah, no, like it did give me kind of that survival horror vibe, because like one of my favorite video games is Resident Evil, and they really hit that on the head that it's like a lot of monsters, little resources, and I felt like that was kind of the same. A similar situation with Underwater, just because like these are deep sea miners, not space marines, so like they just kind of cobble together some stuff to try and survive.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I'm glad you guys dug it.
Oh yeah,
we loved it. In fact, I'll bet this is not the last time we talk about it during this conversation.
Yeah,
great.
But let's backtrack a little bit. Let's talk about The Babysitter.
Sure.
How did that come up? Because The Babysitter was weird because it kind of came out of nowhere on Netflix. And I mean, everybody I've talked to, not in like The Exorcist way, just in like a fun, splattery, schlocky way. They love The Babysitter. How did that come about? I mean, with Mick G and all. Was it an original story that you brought to him, or how did that all happen?
Yeah. So it was a spec script that I had written. I can't remember what year it was, but his company had picked it up, they'd offered like progress to production kind of language, which meant like if they don't make it in like I think it was 6 months or something, like, you know, I get it, that kind of stuff. And then they'd been doing the rounds of interviewing directors, and then McGee raised his hand as it being something he would want to try his hand at. Then we were at New Line for a minute, and then at some point in post, I think that's when it wound up at Netflix. Yeah.
You didn't have anything to do with this with Killer Queen, right? It's
No.
Based on your characters. Okay.
My buddy wrote it. I mean, I'm working with Sam on a project that I'm producing next year. That Jimmy, one of the writers of Killer Queen, is hoping to write and direct. So I'm still enmeshed with those kids. But I was busy on Spontaneous when they were getting going on Killer Queen.
And also, your work on Underwater is probably done, but I mean...
Yeah, I was done on Underwater in like 2015, I think. Okay. And then because Underwater got delayed a bunch through no fault of the movies, just during like the Fox Disney sale. So it's like not as new as 2020 makes it seem. Like I think they filmed it in 2017. I might be way off. But they just got, you know, and there was a bunch of movies that kind of got in the same boat of like that, you know, when there's giant corporations merging, it just takes everything so much longer to kind of figure out everything. So I was done on Underwater well before Killer Queen. I think before I shot Spontaneous. Yeah.
Sounds like everybody was done on Underwater long before. I mean, if they shot it in 2017, but
I think I might. It was 17 or it must have been 17 because I shot Spontaneous in the start of 18, and I'm pretty sure they were done when I started shooting. But everything's a blur now. So
time has no meaning.
Yeah, it's crazy.
This year has absolutely been a blur. It's weird to think Underwater was the beginning of this year, because it seems like it was so much longer ago. But
yeah, I know, because I have a daughter, and we kept trying to figure out when we could go see Underwater, and she wasn't one yet, and that was February, and then we kept trying to like get groups of people to go, but it was so complicated because we needed to like have someone watch our 11-month-old at the time, and then it was out of theaters so quickly, and then the pandemic hit, so it was just kind of like this wild kind of time where I was like, oh yeah, I did have this movie come out, but it feels like it got absorbed in all the chaos. But I'm hoping at some point, I assume it'll like go to HBO or something, or like a streamer, and then I feel like that's when people will kind of discover it.
What's the last movie you saw in a theater before the pandemic?
Star Wars.
Star Wars? Like the Rise of Skywalker?
Yeah. You know, once you have like a kiddo, it's tougher to go out. And so we were at my wife's home in Michigan when Skywalker dropped. And so the baby could stay with my in-laws. And we went and saw that with some of the nieces and nephews. But it was great. My in-laws loved Underwater, which was like my favorite.
Nice.
I feel like the best phone calls to get are when your in-laws are like, "You're not a piece of shit. You're doing all right."
Isn't it a great feeling? Like when you get that like nice reaffirming, "Hey, you did this one thing and it was pretty great."
Yeah, my in-laws have always been great too, but it's like I'm always like particularly thrilled where it's like they're like, you know, they go see the movie and they're like they just loved. Like my father-in-law really loved it, and I was like, oh, this is great. Like this is, you know, the only reviews I should care about are the people that you know, could really make my life difficult if they hated me.
So it works out.
Yeah, but Skywalker was the last one. I remember it was like out of focus the whole time, and I kept leaving the theater being like, it's out of focus, and like the people in Kalamazoo were just like, I don't know what that means.
That's happened to me a few times. I did that at the ArcLight in Hollywood with Wonder Woman. I came out and I complained, and they're like, yeah, there's nothing we can do. It's a digital projector. And I'm like, listen, lady, I used to project. I know what's going on. I had a few beforehand, but...
Yeah, it's not hard to fix, which makes it like all the more infuriating where you just want to go into the booth and just like...
I did that once.
In 1 second, fix the problem.
I did that with Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. It was one of the last 35 millimeter movies in my college town. to be playing, and it was out of focus and not framed right, so the bottom was at the top, and I went up to the front, complained, no one was there. And like I got so pissed, I was like, fuck this. And I went up into the booth. No one was in the booth. So I just adjusted it myself and went back downstairs and finished the movie. I sent them a long email about it and stuff. And they were like, oh, here's 6 free tickets. I'm like, I don't want to see any more fucking movies at your theater if you're going to present them like that.
I know. It's like one of those things that's like, I feel like because the Skywalker viewing experience was so crummy, it's made me a little like, I still really miss going to the movies, but it's made me like a little less miserable, I guess, where I'm like, I really miss the theatrical experience, but I'm also like, the last couple of times I went, like, it was out of focus and no one knew how to, you know, it's like those things where I'm like, at home, you know, it looks and sounds really good. So,
Yeah.
Out of curiosity, have you considered going to the drive-in?
yeah, we have. Again, it's mostly just because if, you know, it depends on how much trouble I want to get into. Because if I go, that means my wife can't go. And it's also pretty far. We're in Burbank, so it's not like the closest, which is so stupid. It feels like, you know, we have a bunch of IKEAs with massive parking lots. Like, let's turn these things into drive-ins, or just like movie theater parking lots. But I haven't. Yeah, I mean, that's the. I won't go into a theater until this is, you know, really low numbers and a vaccine, and so, you know, unless there's, you know, screeners for like the Guild Awards and stuff. Like, I don't know when I'm seeing Tenet, but I know it's at the drive-in, and I'd love to go. But it's like, it's way more complicated to see a drive-in in LA than you would think.
You'd think there would be more local ones.
Yeah, even like even like at the Dome, like they have that roof parking lot, and it's like, just put a screen up there. You know, there's just so many places you could put screens where some of these theaters could be, you know, cashing in a little bit of money, because I think like Tenet made like $2 million this year. It's like, this thing's not working. So it's like, let's like put up a drive-in in the parking lots, and if like if the ArcLight was like, you can go see Tenet inside or outside, I feel like a lot of people would be really down. Like, I don't know. I've been like, I think Sony's the only studio that's doing drive-in stuff at like their backlots, and that feels like such an opportunity to like just make, like, you're not going to make millions, but you know, every little bit helps right now.
IFC, there was a stretch of about 2 months where IFC was winning the box office every week because they were releasing stuff like, you know, The Wretched, True History of the Kelly Gang. You know, they were releasing stuff too. And IFC's killing this year. We've discussed that so much because they're just slaying. But let's talk about Spontaneous.
Yeah,
because that's what we're here to do. now that we've gotten Underwater out of our system and the Babysitter.
Not enough monsters in Spontaneous. That's a criticism I have about it.
Well, that's kind of what. That was kind of my first impression of it. It almost is like a teenage rom-com, but it just so happens that there's this ticking bomb of anybody can explode at any time under it. Where did the inspiration for Spontaneous come from? Sure.
Well, it's a great book that Aaron Starmer wrote that came out a couple years ago. And then I got sent when it was like in its, like, you know, galleys form or whatever they call it. And it just felt like it was such a, you know, because like spontaneous combustion is always like, and there's, you know, there's a handful of combustion movies that kind of take like the Crichton path with it, I guess. But it feels really hard. It felt to me like one of those ideas, like I'd love to do something with that, but it's really hard to like build an actual narrative around this thing that is spontaneous, and especially without getting into like thriller territory or like too much of like a Contagion territory, because then it's just and also like what's like the joy of watching a movie where like scanners happen, like the pop in scanners happens like 70 times or something. Like it just seems like I never could figure out like a way to like hang a hat on the idea. And then Aaron did, and I kind of, once he put it into high school, you know, I thought like it just clicked so clearly. And one of the things I loved about it that we talked about a lot, like in prep, and I've talked with Aaron about, is that it does feel, and it's what I talked to the actors about. It's like, you know, it's like Fault in Our Stars or like a John Hughes movie that Cronenberg is just drunkenly like bursting onto the set and fucking up. And he's just like, it's like, so like every time you'd be like, oh, I'm going to get like my like la-di-da YA thing, like Cronenberg just like coming onto the set and like being like, and now he explodes. And it just felt like this, like this really bizarre kind of thing where Catherine's character is trying to kind of live her John Hughes experience. And then, you know, David Cronenberg, or I guess both Cronenbergs now, but you know, Cronenberg is just trying to ruin her experience, and it felt like a really fun way to talk about, you know, thematically all the stuff that was really interesting to me. But then also, you know, I feel like you have like the Monster Squad poster above your head, but I feel like there's like like those kind of like gateway horror movies that aren't quite horror movies, or something that I've always loved. And my wife was never like a horror nut, and she's kind of started getting into it because of like some of like those like gateway horror kind of stuff. And, you know, I don't necessarily know if I think Spontaneous is a horror movie, but I think it's like if I was like 12 and I was like, oh, I really like seeing these people explode. Like I could see like for me, I was like, I could see the train of thought of like kids being like, I can actually hang with gory things, because I think that was one of the cool things about it too, is like a lot of people being scared to watch it because they didn't like gore, and then kind of afterwards them being really kind of, and it's not the goriest movie, but it's like, you know, kids are bloodily exploding, but then kind of being into it, and then kind of being into like probably what all of us were like when we were like 6 years old, and just being like, you can like shoot blood at people, like seeing like them kind of get into like, how do you make something gory, and kind of like, you know, that kind of like little trigger of a thing of people that wouldn't normally watch a horror movie can get, you know, you kind of are sneaking a horror movie in and hopefully like ruining them for the future. So it felt like a lot of the things that I love, because it was like, you know, it's kind of like a sneak attack horror movie where if you're, you know, 12 or younger even, like it could spark that love of horror. Because it feels like now, for the most part too, there's not a ton of those gateway kind of stuff, or they're really soft. And I really like that first Goosebumps. But it doesn't, but it, you know, that's very aimed at kids, and it's very like, it is a, you know, it's like a kid horror as opposed to something that felt a little sneakier, which is something that I kind of dug playing with.
You got like John Hughes by way of Cronenberg is what Spontaneous kind of is.
Yeah, that was like the pitch. That was like, and I can't remember if that might have even been the author's pitch, but it just felt, I really like those things where, you know, it's two things that really should not go together, and then you really smash them together. Like even on Babysitter, and it's less so in the movie, because the movie is so stylized. But like I really like in the script, like it was really like that first 30 pages was very Sundance indie film. And like I remember we got passes from like not a couple horror companies when we went out with the script, because they were just like, oh, we just don't do like coming of age dramas, because they just didn't get to the part where, you know, this other movie just takes over and ruins it. And so that's always been something tonally I'm really interested in, is like having like one kind of movie start fighting with another kind of movie on screen. And Spontaneous felt like, you know, kind of the apex of that, where you're doing like you're doing like all like the Fault in Our Stars stuff, and then you're just blowing up 40 kids at the same time.
How did the casting come into play? Because for me, the relationship between Mara and Dylan that's the whole movie right there. Yeah. It's just so genuine and so real. And I don't think two other actors could have done that, or at least not as well. So, I mean, how did you land on casting Charlie Plummer and Catherine Langsford?
Catherine was a lot easier in terms of, I had known her a little bit. Like we had met a couple times on other things that didn't wind up getting made. And I just always loved her. And so she was filming her Netflix show 13 Reasons Why when we sent her the script. And so she got involved pretty early. And then the Dylan role took a lot longer. And part of that too, there wasn't a lot, because she was filming 13 Reasons and I was in LA. Like there wasn't like a lot of opportunity. I think we had like one day where she tested with some other actors. And it was like a really specific thing where I feel like a lot of like teen romances, or like a lot of like rom-coms in general, are really, or maybe not the rom-com part, but a lot of those romances are like really intense and like really steamy, and like they always are saying like very like eloquent, poetic things to each other. And I really wanted them to be kind of dorky together. Like I wanted it to feel like they just really enjoyed spending time together, and they were always like making each other laugh, because I felt like, and again, like it's kind of like the larger picture tonally, but you know, if you have a movie where 40 kids are dying and you don't want it to be Elephant, you know, it's a lot of work to kind of make that all mesh and feel like an enjoyable movie going experience. And so Charlie had auditioned, I think right as his Ridley Scott movie had come out. And he was 17 at the time, I think. And we loved him, but we were like, does he feel like does he look a little too much younger than Catherine at the time to like make this feel like a good relationship? And then I think we got pushed for a few months I can't remember why. And then we still hadn't cast the role. And then I was in prep up in Vancouver. And it was kind of getting down to crunch time, and Charlie could be in LA, but I couldn't be in LA, but Catherine was in LA. And so the two of them just got dinner one night, and I basically told Catherine, I was like, look, if you feel like he's the guy, like, tell me, and he's the guy, like, I trust you. And she was like, you know, she came out the dinner, it's like, he's totally the guy. We just laughed the whole time. It's exactly what you want. He doesn't feel younger than me at all. It's going to be great. And so I just trusted her implicitly. And then the first time I saw them together was basically on set. And then I was just like, I got really fucking lucky because they are really fun. And I had Skyped and called and talked with Charlie a bunch, but like, you know, it's really scary when you don't see them together until, you know, they're together on film, and not knowing, like, and again, it's the whole movie, and so it's like, if that doesn't sparkle, you're just kind of treading water for 90 minutes.
Yeah, they're perfect though.
Yeah, but they get along
great.
Yeah, and I think Charlie really clicked into, like, my job in this movie is just to kind of make Catherine like laugh as much as I can. And I think it really comes across, like, in their relationships, where it just seems like they're having a lot of fun together. Like, everything in the world around them is you know, really extreme and terrible. But it really does seem like, you know, they're just having a blast, which I feel like you don't really see a lot of in relationship movies, especially like teen relationship stuff. Like, it always feels like it's very heavy or very, like, you know, this relationship is life or death, but there's no conflict in their relationship. Like, he just loves this girl and she's like, this guy's great, and then that's like the whole amount of conflict, like, that's actually interpersonal, and then everything else is you know, the world's ending around us, but it's really fun to, like, hang out and be goofy and be distracted from the end of the world, as opposed to just, like, you know, these kind of doom related kind of relationship things.
Yeah, I was going to say that's one of the things I really loved about their relationship. Like, the E.T. Elliot scene in particular cracked me up.
Cool. Yeah, that was like one of those things where when that scene happens, like, and it was something I talked about with Catherine a lot, where she's a little caustic in the movie. But it was like, you know, she really wanted to find that line of not feeling like she's a psychopath, where she doesn't care that, you know, 40 kids around her are dying. And so it was like finding, like, those moments where you could really, like, understand, like, oh, everything that's happening is having a weight on her, but she's just doing everything she can to kind of push it away by being silly. And then once you're, like, in, you know, tense like that, like, the first thing that, I mean, until, like, I guess COVID, but, like, the first thing that, you know, comes into your head is, for me, was the ET thing. And it just felt like the funniest, or like the funniest thing she could do in that moment is, like, see that this boy that she loves is really stressed out and having a hard time, and instead of doing the, like, it's okay, we're gonna get through this, just, like, be a complete nerd, and be as silly as possible, and, like, how it does, like, completely, like, change and help him kind of through this difficult experience that he's going through. And it felt like, again, like, it's like those things in movies that I feel like I don't see enough of, where, like, I get, like, the really the heavy, like, emotional, like, we're gonna get through this kind of thing, but in my life, like, I know that would be all subtextual, and I would say something really stupid, and that would be how I deal with the end of the world. And I think that's been proven the last couple of months in our household. And so that was just like finding like those moments. And a lot of them were in the book too. It was just like finding these moments where Mara could take, and Dylan could take like a serious path, but instead they like just are really silly. And not even like because it's a comedy, but just because I think they know how hard it is to talk about how their world is ending, and it's just a lot more enjoyable if they just don't. But they know what each other is saying, they're just like, instead of like just being like, oh, everyone is dying all the time around us, like we can not talk about it because we're covered in blood the whole movie. So that was kind of the point. And then it's been tough in the marketing because they actually don't talk about people exploding that much in the movie because it's such a visual thing. So it kind of seems dumb for people to be like, everyone's exploding, like repeatedly verbally. And so I think every time someone mentions exploding, it's in the trailer, and then we can't show any of the exploding because it's, of the MPAA and stuff. And so it's been like this fun lesson to learn, where I was like, oh, I probably should have had characters reference the fact that they were exploding more just for marketing purposes. But again, it's like that thing where, the movie doesn't lack exploding kids. So it wasn't something I was thinking about, like, I should explain that kids are exploding when, everyone is covered in blood, the whole movie, basically. Yeah.
And on the exploding kids, I wanted to ask how the effects were handled for that. Was that practical, CG, a mixture of both?
I would say it's predominantly practical. And so we would have like these blood cannons, basically, which are exactly what they sound like. They're like these kind of like, fire extinguisher looking things that have like this giant like hose nozzle on them. And we did a bunch of tests about like, how fast it could go, how much it could go. And there would be some where you could make it like really like chunky and like nauseating kind of. And so it was a lot of testing to find out like, again, like what is like baby's first horror movie explosion kind of thing, where it was like, what's the version where you get the fact that a kid just exploded and they're full of blood, but you're not getting into like bones and hair and like intestines and that kind of stuff. And so it was mostly practical. And then because it's a nozzle, you'd see like the nozzle ring kind of hit on the walls or on people. Like it would just be like this perfect circle of no blood in the middle of like this big splatter. And so we used CG to kind of fill in that. And then but yeah, even like for the most part, even like the big explosions that are on screen, like there's definitely CG going on, but there's no like purely CG explosion. Like it's a lot of like, you have an actor, then you swap the actor out, and then you put in the cannon explodes, and then you merge all of those things together. It was just one of those things. I feel like CG blood has never really looked good, and so just having as much of like that practical liquid as possible really helps. And then it also helps it was it's fun to get hit with that if you're an actor, and I got hit with it a ton, but it helps so much where you're like, it'd be like one thing if I was just like, I got covered. And we filmed like dry runs because we're an indie movie, and so we don't have like a ton of time to reset, but like it would be like an hour to reset anytime we had to do a second take, which is death for a movie of this size, because all your actors have to get showers and then dry off, and then you have to like completely clean the set, but there's just gallons of blood, so it's very hard to clean the set. So we did basically one take of all the blood stuff, but we would film takes without blood in case we were like, well, that explosion was a disaster, but we'll just have to do a CG version because we need to keep going. So I could probably put together a movie of just kids being like, oh, and it'd be really bad. And it's just something, and it's like not a performance thing, but it's just so much different if you act like you got hit by a water balloon and you got hit by a water balloon.
There's a major difference. Yeah,
it's a major difference. Yeah. And so and then it's also it is one of the hard things is, emotionally what's happening is someone's dying, and so you don't want to react like you're having a great time, but it's super fun. It felt like you were kind of at like this really sicko water park, because it's basically just getting hit with like warm sugar water. So it tasted like really sweet. And like one of the things we like would have to rehearse with like the kids that really get hit with it, is not to laugh when you get hit with it, because like your first reaction is to like laugh because it's this really funny feeling, and then it's sticky and sugary, so everything about it's kind of bizarrely pleasant. And then there's just such a tension where like if I'm holding like a gun at you and you're trying to like not act like there's a gun, and then you get hit, like that release is kind of like a so one of the actresses, this great young actress Caitlin Bernard, she gets hit in the first scene and a couple other times, and it was really just like you're really giving like a full performance, because you're trying so hard to not laugh, but because a kid's just died in front of you, but the feeling is very hilarious and silly, and so that was kind of the trick with the blood. It was making it practical, but then also not giggling through it. And like there's a couple background people like throughout the movie you can kind of see they get hit and instantly kind of do like the Jimmy Fallon on SNL thing where they're trying to not laugh but they're doing a really bad job. So it's a lot of like kind of like this. I don't think anyone will be able to see what I just did because it's a podcast, but it's like a lot of like background guys trying to not ruin takes. But it's a really funny feeling. So that was practically the hardest part about it. Was the effects guys were so great, but it was just like getting the actors to like know like you cannot laugh when you get hit because you're gonna get hit like 40 times the next 2 hours. So yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, I think we are wrapping up here. So thank you, Brian, very much for joining us here. And where can people, do you have social media that people can follow you on? Where can people find you to get the newest from you?
Yeah, I'm on, I think all like Instagram, Twitter, and Letterboxd. And I think it's just Brian Duffield.
Okay, just your name? Okay.
Yeah, I think so. I feel like I should check, but I'm pretty sure it's just my name.
We'll track it down and we'll give links. Our theme song is by Restless Spirit, who they're using our theme song in some internet TV show. Did you guys hear about this?
What?
Yeah, it's blowing up. Yeah, Young Grays is the name of the song, and we were there first though. We've been using it for like 3 years. Our artwork is by Chris Fisher, so give him a like. Where can we find you guys on the socials? Jacob?
Well, you can find me on Twitter at Jacob Davison _. That's JACOBDAVSON _ on Instagram, Jacob _ Davison. And thanks for Brian for reminding me to plug this. You can find me on Letterboxd as Imaginos, IMAGINOS.
And you, Korea? Where can we find you?
You can find me on Instagram and Twitter as Korean Barbecue. That's CORREIAN BBQ. I'm also on Letterboxd, but I just do it to keep track with a diary. I don't post reviews. Don't look me up on there.
Yeah.
It's boring.
That's me too.
Do you really need to know how many times I watch Streets of Fire a year? Like, that's all it's for.
No, this is something I'm invested in.
Yeah. You follow Jacob. He's much more interesting.
I find it so helpful. Yeah.
I'm the same way on Letterboxd. I use it as a diary, but I don't set any reviews. So, I mean, you can find me on there. I don't even know my username. It's probably just my name, probably just James J. Edwards.
Same.
But on Twitter, I am Cinema Verite. That's verite, but with fear, so it's FEARITE. And you can find all three of us at the Eye on Horror Facebook page, the iHorror Facebook page, the Eye on Horror Twitter, the Eye on Horror Instagram. Am I missing any, Korea? He's our social media guru.
I don't know about guru, but like, yeah, I have it on my phone, so.
Oh, okay. So we're not hard to get a hold of. Or at iHorror.com. If all else fails, you can find us all there. So, again, Brian, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you guys.
And everybody go see Spontaneous out. Is it the 2nd, October 2nd?
2nd, and then the 6th on VOD and all that stuff. And then, like, I think sometime in November is the physical release.
Okay, cool. I think that this episode is going to post on the 5th. So tomorrow on
Pre-order
VOD.
that shit.
Yeah. Hopefully you went out and saw it in a theater on Friday. Cool. So,
And definitely go see it. It's a fun, charming film with like lots of people exploding into bloody messes. It's a great date movie. My fiance and I enjoyed it when we watched it last night. So
yeah, the next movie I do will be scarier. But I felt like I needed to get like the gateway one out of the way.
what more of a pitch do you need than John Hughes meets David Cronenberg?
Yeah, just John Hughes just beaten by David Cronenberg.
Just beaten down.
Now that's a visual.
I do have to say that line in the movie about 7 months. Try not to spoil too much, but when they go, "Oh, it's been 7 months," that hit a bit too hard last night.
Oh God!
COVID
I didn't
and all
think
that.
about that.
Yeah, I was sitting there. I was
no.
like, "Oh, that line hits a little different these days, doesn't it?"
That's been like one of the it's like frustrating in like a way that it's no one's fault, but we finished the movie last year, and so it's been this kind of I'll text like Charlie and Catherine kind of throughout like as like something in the real world happens where I'm just kind of like, oh no, it's so on the nose now, but it was so like outlandish when we filmed it. So I hope people aren't like annoyed by how on the nose it is, because it was done in a way where we were just I remember we were filming and we were like, we never talked about like an actual pandemic happening. We were like, and there's a couple lines about it. Like when we were filming, like we were definitely like talking a lot about like nuclear war and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, it'd be great if like we get this movie out before we're nuked. And now it's just like all these things in the movie that are like, I'm like, oh, like I learned so much more about like pandemic response. Like I can see all the inaccuracies in the movie because like it's I didn't have like Dr. Fauci telling us how to do things.
I was about to say you there's no way this was made full moon style and made during the pandemic, so I think you guys are more than good.
No, yeah, for sure. I think we'll get I think people will be a little graceful with how on the nose we are.
Yeah, I mean, thematically, it's the movie of the year.
It's blunt. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. We signed off like 10 minutes ago, and here we are still talking.
We're having too much fun.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's the sign of a good interview when we can't stop. So we will see you guys next time. So for me, I'm James J. Edwards.
I'm Jacob Davison.
I'm Jonathan Correa.
Oh, and I'm Brian Duffield.
Keep your eye on horror.